Excuse me.
You never know, everybody's seeing. Is that oil or acrylic?
Oil. Oh, is this on? Hello. Okay. I've never been hooked up to a mic before, so this is a little weird. Okay. Is this a good level for everyone to hear me? So I have to talk louder like this. Is this okay? Okay. Forgive me in advance. I'm a little under the weather, along with 4-month-old sleep deprivation. So a lot of things working with me today, but I can do it. All right. My name's Andrea Gianchiglia. I specialize in animal portraiture. I mostly actually work in oil and pastel. I do watercolor as well, obviously, since I'm doing watercolor today. But I really enjoy oil and pastel. The one up here is oil. It's actually in progress. It's one I'm going to be doing today for you, actually in watercolor. Just go ahead here. I love cows. I'm kind of in a cow-obsessed phase right now. And these cows are actually the same cows over here. This past summer, I visited this farm. I pass it every day. It's out in Tewksbury, it's out in California, out in the middle of nowhere. And it's actually the Sun Farm. I don't know if anyone lives. Do you live out that way? No? All right. Okay then. But it's a great farm. Love cows. I went there with my big belly in the summer and walked right up there. Come in and with my camera. I said, hey, can I take pictures of your cows? And they looked at me. It's a family-run farm. And they're like, okay, go ahead, walk around. So I walked around, took all these pictures, and I didn't go into the pasture, but they all started to come up to me. And they all stood in their herd. And it was just so nice. They all just kind of walking by. I said hello to every single one. It was just such a real experience. And I said, all right, I'm going to paint these cows. So this past summer was kind of me gathering reference for when I was not pregnant. So I had to paint all these beautiful animals. I just started this one. It's actually just my first layer of oil on it. I love it. I plan on doing more. It's actually kind of wet still, but I just want to show you the difference of what this is versus the watercolor. So we'll see how the watercolor turns out, I promises, in comparison to this. So I'll put that over here. My printer kind of decided not to cooperate with me, of course, today. So I have a very red version here and a very green version here, but I'm kind of going to take both and combine them together. And that's actually something I do a lot of in my portraits is if someone gives me a picture of something and it's not that great, I just kind of make up the colors. I say, hey, you know what, let's add a little bit more purple to it. Hey, let's bump up the darks. Let's add a little blue here and there. So you'll find that I'll kind of amp up some of the colors as I go. And we'll see how it goes. Watercolor, it dries a little bit lighter, as you guys all know. So we'll have fun with it. This is my palette here, although you can't see it, so let me try and move it a little over here just for the sake of talking about it. I don't want to get it on my painting. How about I put it in here? There.
Good.
Awesome. Okay, so believe it or not, this palette was the same palette I had in college. I made this palette about 10 years ago, so it's the same palette I used then. I don't freshly squeeze out colors. I just squirt the whole tube in there, let it dry, and that's it. And it's really literally it's barely being held together. This isn't even connected to it anymore. So it's kind of embarrassing, but it works, and it's not like I can take these out. So it works, and it just goes to show that you don't need anything fancy. You don't need any fancy setup with all the different colors and all these different things. You could really just use anything. I really just use one brush. It is one really nice brush. It's a Raphael Kolinsky. It's a number 6, I believe. And what's interesting is, I'm gonna sit, when I was taking my watercolor class in college, and he said, okay, you guys go out and get all these colors, and all you have to do is buy one brush. So we're like, all right, sweet, we only have to buy one brush. College students, we're broke, great. So we all go to the store, and we're like, all right, one brush. And then we look at the price tag for it. And it's, it's a hefty price. It's not an inexpensive brush, but let me tell you, this is the best brush. I've held on to it for so long. I would highly recommend it to anyone. Not only can I cover large areas with it, I can get very fine detail with it. So I highly recommend it. Raphael Kolinsky, I'm sure a lot of you guys have used it before. It's a sable hair brush.
What size?
6.
Although, honestly, when people ask me what size brush I have, or if they're signing up for, like, say, my oils class or something, they say, what size brushes do you recommend? I'm like, I don't know, just get a pack of whatever. And they're like, well, what sizes? What numbers? I'm like, I just kind of like stare at them like with a deer in headlights, because I really just don't pay attention to the numbers. I kind of just say, I don't know, that one's good, and that's it. So I'm really not that technical of a person. As I go, you'll probably, and if you've taken classes with me before, and I know some of you guys are here, I kind of make up words. I use the word squiggle and wiggle and all these fun kind of interpretations. So like I said, I'm really not that technical. I'm not that technical of a vocabulary, and I think I just broke this. Of course, nothing's working for me today.
Hello.
Sorry.
Are we back together?
We are good to go. Okay. So let me talk about my palette. We have, let me see if I could remember this from 10 years ago. Some of these I'll be honest, I won't remember. But this one right here is Cobalt. I love Cobalt. Ultramarine Blue, that's my staple blue. It's getting down towards the bottom, which shows how much I use it. I have Cerulean Blue here. This one's Phthalo Blue. So I have my Warm and Cool Blue. Here I have Sap Green. Here I have a Warm and Cool Yellow, Cadmium Yellow, and Lemon Yellow. Warm and Cool Red, Cadmium Red, Alizarin Crimson Red. Here I have, I think it says Burnt Umber, not Raw Umber. And here, honestly, I don't remember what this one is. That's embarrassing. I want to say it's a Van Dyke Brown. Here I actually have black. Now, let's talk about black for a second. I usually don't use black in my palette. This was here, well, like I said, in college, I did whatever the teacher said, squirted out whatever tubes they wanted. It's there. And you'll see me, I might grab some of the black today. That's okay, but I tried really not to. When I work with oil, I use a combination of brown and blue. When I work in pastels, I use really deep darks. Dark purples, dark blues, and whatnot. But there will be times where I'll grab a little bit of black. And you know, a lot of times people will say, oh no, you can't use black. And it's kind of like, you can't use the white gouache on watercolor, or you can't do this. Who says that, you know? I mean, do whatever you want. As long as it comes out cool, then I think that's fine. So I might end up grabbing some of the black today. So I'm not, you know, I guess they call it a purist, or no black. It's okay, breathe. Here we have, I believe this is raw sienna, yellow ochre, and I don't know which is which, but I know it's terracotta and Indian red. But they're reddish browns, so that's all that matters. All right.
Brand.
What?
The brand.
The brand is Winsor & Newton, I remember. I do like Winsor & Newton, but really, I mean, I'm not gonna say any brand's better than another. They're all fine. I do not use the white, like I had just mentioned. I don't use white gouache. I try to preserve the white the best I can. I used to have masking fluid, and then it dried up on me, and then I couldn't open it anymore, so I said it was a sign that I wasn't supposed to use it. And then like 5 or 6 years went by, and one of my students had brought it into the classroom again, and I said, hey, you know what? I miss masking fluid. Let me borrow some of hers. So I used it and I loved it. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna go get it again. So I ordered it, bought it again, and it has the little needle in it, you know. Put the needle in, the needle like bent, and then it dried up, and I couldn't open it again, and it was totally useless again. So I was like, it's a sign. I cannot use art masking fluid. So I'm just gonna preserve my whites and kind of wing it. I'm just gonna go with it, okay? So I took the liberty of just kind of sketching it out. Some of you that came in early might have seen me sketching it. I was watching some of the other demos last night from the website, which they were also wonderful. And I noticed that you probably wouldn't be able to really see the pencil. I mean, you can kind of see it on there, I guess, but I think I used like a B pencil, so it's a little bit, you know, darker, just so that way you guys can see it. But I figure I'd get that out of the way so you guys can actually see the fun part of painting. So I think we shall start. I might end up actually grabbing my iPad to work from the reference I have as well. I usually use my iPad to use, the colors are a lot richer for reference instead of just the printouts. Of course, when your printer isn't cooperating, it doesn't help. But actually, the last year I started using my iPad for my reference photo, and not only are you saving ink and paper, let me tell you, that's expensive, but I've noticed such an increase in awesomeness in my artwork that I really don't want to go back to, you know, just working on from a photo. So if you have a tablet, use it for your reference. And if you don't have a tablet, it's a good excuse to get one. So it's a really nice thing. You can zoom in, zoom out. And it's funny because I'll do here, sometimes in my classes, someone will be working from a photo and I'll be like, oh, zooming in with this kind of mentality, where you zoom in and I'm like, oh my gosh, technology has really taken over. So I'm going to try not to do that. This is actually the reference I'm using for my oil painting over there. So the full picture actually is that, if you can see it, but it was just kind of too much. So I kind of just was like, hey, I had this canvas, which is, I believe, 18 by 36, so twice as long as it is tall. And I was like, hey, you know what? I picture cows on that. And that's usually how I kind of approach a painting, is I say, what canvas do I have, first of all? And what do I think would look good on it? And I just kind of based it off that. So I kind of folded it and just kind of went from there. And I'm really liking it so far. And I just can't help but smile when I look at it, because they're cows. Who doesn't love cows? All right, so I'm gonna crank this water. I'm like severely dehydrated from me not feeling well, so pardon me if I break to drink a lot. Okay, let's get started. So I'm gonna say right off the bat, I start off, I'm kind of one of those watercolors that does everything the wrong way, quote unquote, not like normal watercolorists. So I start off with my darks. I know you have to build up to your darks, yada, 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 but do you? I mean, I normally start off with a brown and blue mixture, ultramarine. Whenever I say blue, that means ultramarine blue, by the way. I always say that to my students in my class. Whenever I specify a different blue, then that means a different blue. But whenever I just say blue, ultramarine blue is the go-to. The paper I'm working on, by the way, is 300-pound Arches watercolor, cold press, nice and thick. So, you guys can't see my palette, can you? What if I moved it right? Well, you can kind of see it. Well, there's my mixture.
You can see it, yeah.
Okay, well, you'll just have to use your imagination. Okay, so normally, a lot of people say mass in the big chunks and all that, but I actually like to start with the eyes, and then I'll go to all the big areas. But I find with animals, if you don't start off with the eyes, if you get the eye wrong, then it's kind of like, oh, well, it's all wrong. So if you do it right from the beginning, then it'll be nice to have something looking back at you too. So I'm going to start off by getting in my darks. And please, by any means, if you guys have questions, please just shout them out. Oh, I love 300. So nice. I used to only work on 140. There's that little guy's eyes. Actually, it's not a guy, they're all girls because it's a dairy farm. So I have a very rough sketch. I mean, sometimes I'll be a little bit more picky with the sketch. So cute. All right, let's go to our nostrils now. Now here's a little fun story about nostrils and noses. And I just literally noticed this while I was sketching out today. Whenever I teach animals, I always talk about how dog noses, which are very similar, you must admit, to cow noses, they kind of look like, bear with me, E.T.'s head. Does that make any sense? You know, E.T., the extraterrestrial. Do you see it? Kind of, like these are the eyes, sort of. It's okay, I'm a little crazy. You can look at me and say, all right, I think I'm gonna leave. But it's all right. But it does, right? I always find, and whenever I teach a class, it's helpful for the students to kind of relate something to something else. So that way you're like, oh yeah, you know what, it is like that. Or say, we've all done jigsaw puzzles, right? This shape, it looks very much like a jigsaw puzzle. Like that little piece that kind of comes in, bigger, cinches down. So same idea. All right, let's start getting into these larger dark areas. You can see how my color is a little bit more of the bluer heavy versus the brown. Yeah, you'll never look at a dog nose or a cow nose again without thinking of, was it Steven Spielberg and any of that? You know what was interesting is I was teaching I teach all ages. I teach adults, I teach teens, I teach kids. And I was telling them how, a dog nose looks like E.T.'s head. And they're like, who's E.T.? I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? I was like, wow, all right. So much for that. So a common thing that actually one of my students pointed out to me was what I do is, like what I'm doing right now is I call it vacuuming up, sopping up a lot of the moisture just to kind of get a lighter tone. So I dip it in the water, dry it a little bit off, kind of use some clean water just to kind of spread it a little bit. It's picking up some of the paint here and there. This is the stage that I feel is probably the most important. It's more of an underpainting stage where if you don't get this right, your painting's not going to look that great. So I always tell, especially my students, strong drawing, strong underpainting makes a strong final painting. So don't rush. People always say, like, oh, well, am I ready for color? Am I ready to go into this? Am I ready for that? Like, yeah, you can. That's great. But, you really should take some time, work out all the kinks, figure out, are things the way you like them? Especially with watercolor, you kind of do need to have a plan. So I'm putting all my darks where I see my darks. I always darken more later. So see, I am starting with my darks, even though they're not going to be extremely dark quite yet. They will be later on. Starting off with this brown cow. We gotta name her. What should we name her? How about Bess? She looks like a Bess.
Andrea, do you ever use 300 hot press?
I used to use hot press a while ago, but then I discovered the cold press, and I thought the texture was a little bit nicer for some things that I'm doing. I think if you're doing something like maybe like, I'm going to say this weirdly, but a human portrait, hot press might be a little bit nicer because it has a smoother texture, but I find the cold press is nice for animal texture. That was a good question. A little bit more dark here. This looks so much like my dog for some reason. I have a pit bull at home, and he has the wide set eyes, and he's a sweetie. Okay, a little bit of negative space there. All right, I think this guy is just about a lot of the darks mapped in, so I'm going to switch modes and go to another one. I should really count how many I have in this one. I think the oil one over there, I have 10 cows. I think I counted. This one I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think? I don't know. It's kind of one of those find Waldos. All right.
We'll find out when you're done.
Yeah, right? All right, let's get this guy in. He is over here. We'll get some nice brown and blue mixed up. Being very loose with it, I'm not being too picky with things. Some more of that. Nice and dark in here. Now, I don't mind bleeds. I think bleeds are kind of nice. loved about this piece is that it was very abstract almost in a way. Because it's so zoomed in. Like if you were to just look at this, like I have no clue what this is. But when I look at the picture, it's, oh, it's a cow head, partial body, back, whatever it is. Okay, let's move on to this little guy up here. This guy reminds me of a goat. One time I had to do a goat painting for someone. It was actually a drawing. She had 3 goats. It was her pets. She didn't let them in the, I don't think she let them in the house. I'm not, actually, you know what, I'm not sure. So I shouldn't say that she didn't. But they were her pets. So I did her 3 goats, and it was just wonderful. They were very adorable. Cows also have the same kind of eyes as goats and horses as well. They have that horizontal type of a pupil. If you've never seen one of them, go out to where I live, go up to a horse, go up to a cow. They're kind of scary looking, actually. Okay, let's get this guy's eye in. I keep saying guys, they're all girls. The dairy farm. So I try to maintain my highlights. Now in the picture, there's not that much of a highlight, but you're the artist, you can always make up what you want. So that's what I like to do.
You always paint sitting?
That's a great question. Do I always paint sitting? Well, do you want me to be honest? I do like to sit when I paint. I do. With watercolor, obviously, you know, I like to sit because, you know, you have to work flat. With oil, it really depends on where I'm kind of working, how I feel that day. I do like to work standing up with oil. I usually work a lot on my paintings while at work as well. So I'll work on an easel upright. It's helpful to step away from your artwork and look at things from a distance. Absolutely, I always tell my students that. With pastels, you know, it's nice to sit. I just started working more upright with that because I was working flat, which I know is a big no-no, but I do things all the weird way, apparently. But I mean, it really just depends on how I feel. Like today, I want to sit. But getting up and looking at it from a distance is very important, and that's something I definitely probably nag my students. Nag would probably be a good word for it in my classes. I would get up, look at your paintings from a distance. You won't see if it's coming out right unless you look at it from afar. And you know, a lot of students sit, and that's okay. You shouldn't talk, but it's just important to look at it from a distance. And I always tell people, you know, if you're in a predicament where you can't do that, or your room's too small and you don't have the ability to do so, take a picture of it. We're blessed with these phones that have, you know, cameras on them now. Take a picture of it. And I always tell them, you know, take a picture of it in black and white too. And then take a picture of your painting in black and white. See if the values match up. So that's going to be a good rule of thumb to see if your painting is where it needs to be.
You'll have to forgive me, I might have missed it during your introduction, but why have you found animals to be your muse, so to speak?
Oh, that's a great question. Why do I find animals to be so amazingly awesome? Well, because they are. Actually, let's back that up a little bit. When I was in college, I majored in illustration. Okay, so they were all about technique, you know, learn everything, getting everything right, you know, and I loved it. I really did. You know, they did think about more the business end of it, which I am grateful for, because if it weren't for that, I wouldn't be as good of a business person as I am today. But with that, I never really did animals in school. So when I came home, I graduated and I came home, and my sister had her dog, and I said, hey, you know what, let me paint her dog. And then I did, and I loved it. And I mean, I've always been a fan of animals. I think it had something to do with maybe growing up in a very rural area. I didn't really have the whole neighborhood kids to play with. I mostly kind of just hung out with my dog, played with Barbies, drew, you know, all that good stuff. But I think by doing animals that one time, it really kind of said, hey, you know what, I love doing this. I want to keep doing this. So I did. And I really do try to promote myself as an animal portrait artist because, you know, why promote yourself as anything else? I mean, I really will do anything. I'll do people, I'll do landscapes. I love doing a lot of different things, but animals is definitely what I love to do. I'm technically a pescatarian. I shouldn't say I'm a vegetarian because I do eat fish. But that's why these cubs are so cute. They're just so adorable. But so yeah, the love of animals kind of goes a little bit further than just within art. My husband, though, is true carnivore. So, and that's fine. Everyone always asks, well, what are you going to raise your son to be? I'm like, well, he can eat whatever he wants. You know, if I'm cooking, he'll eat what I eat. And if his father's cooking, then he'll eat what he eats. You know, it's not a big deal. He's old enough, he'll be like, Mom, why do you have, you know, a veggie burger versus, you know, the burger? You know, I'll let him know, and we'll let him make his own decisions. I don't want to be telling him what to do quite yet. So, all right. There's a couple little subtle areas in here I just kind of want to get in.
Did you mention why you start with the darks first?
I start with the darks because I do this in all mediums. I start with the darks because it helps me get a very strong kind of a very strong plan for when I start going in with color. It helps me lay out where there's darks, what makes the light stand out. Because when I go in with color, I can say, oh, it's brown, but is it a light brown or a dark brown? That's something to be aware of. A lot of the times people will hop in with color and they'll be kind of a little bit, they'll be a little confused on, you know, the value. So it's important to make sure that you have a strong underpainting, a value, or a sketch or something, so that way you know when you go in with paint that when you mix a brown, it has to be a dark brown or a light brown or whatever color you're going for. I do it with oils, I do it with pastel.
You have a preference?
I love all mediums. I work in all mediums. I'm trying to think of a medium I don't work in. I'm sure there are a lot, but I just can't think of any of them right now. I really like oils. I'm really growing fond of pastels. Bless you. I really started doing pastels recently. I kind of like self-taught myself the pastels. So that was one medium that we didn't really learn in school too much of. And it's a fun medium. I used it just to kind of get a little bit more free with my work. I used just the chunks of pastel, just the sticks, not any of the pastel pencils. So you're probably thinking, oh, well, how do you get hair? Well, I find ways with the chunk, but even though I'm trying to get a little bit looser with them, I still find ways to get a little bit tight.
Did you ever combine the watercolor and pastel in the same piece?
I haven't combined that particular combination of watercolor and pastel, but I have done, there's a few pieces over in my rack of things for sale of watercolor and colored pencil, which is a fun combination. And I'm not talking colored pencil that's watercolor soluble. I'm talking about just regular colored pencil, like Prismacolor, waxy colored pencil. That's a good medium to kind of use with watercolor as a topper.
Could you put that dot next to the left of the nostril as a marker?
Dot to the left of the nostril.
There.
Here?
No, more to the right. Right.
Right next to the nostril.
Next to the nostril.
Here?
Yeah, is that a?
Oh, that's this. That little negative
Oh, okay,
space.
okay. So it wasn't a marker for you, okay.
No. I was like, I have a dot where? So here is a nice extreme dark. I have the eye kind of sketched in. I don't really see the eye, but gonna give this guy a little bit of an eye, maybe. It might disappear, it might not, who knows. We'll give it an eye anyhow. There she is. I keep saying hey. There she is. So not only by making a nice strong underpainting, but you can allow yourself to have less painting later to do by doing this stage. Like I'll just throw on some colors on top and transparently, you know, they'll show through, the darks will kind of show through, and it'll kind of just lend a hand to the overall structure of the painting. This guy has this little bump thing on top too. He's getting smushed. I keep saying hey to her. Oh. Whatever, they're he's now.
Bess and Buster.
What?
Bess and, what would you name the?
Oh yeah, this is Bess over here.
Bess and Buster.
Buster, okay, that's name. That sounds good. I always wanted to be a crayon namer growing up. The person that names the crayon colors. That didn't happen. There's still time. Okay, now we're gonna move down to this big guy. They're starting to look like cows, right? Sort of. All right, let's mix up more of this brown and blue, brown and blue. I say that a lot in my classes, brown and blue, brown and blue. I should just put it on a video recorder and put it on repeat. I know a lot of watercolorists that probably watch me paint in watercolor, they're probably like, oh my gosh, she's going so dark so quickly. That's so scary. Well, get over it. You can always lift a little bit too. But if you know something's going to be dark, you can just get it dark. I need to get one of my waters refills. Clean water.
What's the brown? There's so many different kinds.
This brown, I believe, is burnt umber.
Burnt umber?
I think it's burnt umber. It's burnt or raw, but I'm pretty sure it's burnt. It makes sense if I wrote it down 10 years ago. But no. That's one thing I love about watercolors, though, is it's very transportable. Squirt it all out. And I know some people like to bring their tubes around, and that's great. I just find I have so much stuff to carry already. I don't want to carry more.
Where did you go to school?
I went to Hartford Art School up in Connecticut. Majored in illustration. It's a wonderful program up there, and I am truly grateful for my teachers that I had. They really just kind of transformed me into just kind of this like machine of cranking things out. It's wonderful. I love it. And I still talk to them. They're very nice. I still talk to my high school art teacher too. Little cast shadow there. All right. Even though there is, you know, for this guy right here, girl in particular, there's black and white on her. Some of the black is very, very light toned. So you want to keep in mind that even though it's a very, very light tone, it's still going to be slightly darker than the white. And that's something that you can all figure out in the value stage. Okay, 2 down, 2 more to go. A lot down, 2 more to go. All right, let's go to this guy over here. I'm still on the page, right? Yes.
Andrea, when you made your illustration, where does watercolor fit in?
Where does watercolor fit in with, and then I lost it. What was that second half of the question?
Medium.
I'm wondering where does watercolor fit as a medium that that would be part of the curriculum for illustration?
Oh, when I was in school?
Yeah.
Well, what was nice about my school is that I think it was my junior year, we did all classes based on medium. So I had a class all oil, class all watercolor, class all, what else did I do? Acrylic and whatnot. So those were more just kind of teaching you the medium, which was great, and applying it to, you know, illustrative type of assignments. But from that point on, you can decide what medium you like the best, and then kind of go from there in your senior year and whatnot. But it was just it's kind of a nice way to introduce a whole bunch of mediums. I don't think anyone in my class primarily used a lot of watercolor. I know I kind of started to use more, I think, oil in my senior year. I can't even remember. But it was nice to have that class under my belt just to say, hey, you know what? I love it. It's great. Except I want to go in the oil route, so that's where I kind of went. But it's quick, it's easy, it's fast, which is nice for illustration. I hope that answers your question.
Yep.
This little guy has an eye here too. Get a little bit more brown and blue going on. This whole area is nice and dark. So I'm just going to map out this guy's back end. All this is really dark. So let's, except for that part where there's that water. I've grown to love gouache as well. Gouache is a wonderful medium. If you've never used gouache, I highly recommend it. Nice opaque version of watercolor. Rim lighting here on the ear, that's going to be an important role. I want to make sure I don't cover that up fully. So think of an underpainting stage as you're really just kind of almost drawing with the paintbrush. Even though I drew it in pencil, this is still, I consider, more of a drawing phase. Oh, hey, Jill. What was the question?
But do you actually make a smaller version of it and do that first? And
Sometimes I
build
do.
it up to the big-
Sometimes I do. With this one, obviously I didn't, and that one I just kind of like went right on there and started. But for the piece that's way over there with the silo, that one I did a little pastel color comp. I kind of worked out the composition. I changed a few things from the reference photo. So sometimes I will do a little kind of like mini study, if you will, of that particular piece. I mean, it really just depends on how I feel going in, or honestly how much time I have. So with that particular piece, I knew, like, okay, well, I know I want to change a few things. I want to alter a few sections, so I want to make sure that I have a good plan before I go in and just kind of hop in with paint. So that's why I did the underpainting there.
Great.
This is the light part of the black marking right here. And then it gets back into the dark again. This part, I think, is the trickiest part almost of the whole painting, because not only is it spotted, but there's lights and darks happening. Let me pull over my reference photos so you guys can see that too. Like right there. So not only do you have to pay attention to the markings and if they're light or dark, but also to the light and darkness of the actual structure of the animal as well. So that's why when you're doing an animal with markings, I always say add the markings a little bit later, although you can't do that with white markings on a cow in watercolor. But if you're doing, say a tiger, okay, try to do the tiger as if it had no stripes first, and then you can go in and add the stripes a little bit later. And the stripes are going to have light and shadow too. Think about a stripe wrapping around the belly of a tiger. It's going to be light on top, and it's going to get darker progressively as it gets underneath. It's dark in here. I was trying to come up with a name for this piece and my oil piece as well, and I was thinking, I think Sesame Street does it. One of those things doesn't belong because it's a brown cow in the midst of like the Holstein cows. I don't know. I'm open to suggestions. It's actually one thing I do a lot of is 'cause I'm not good with like words, if you haven't noticed. I always post the picture on my Facebook art page that I have online, and say, all right, people, I need a title. So if you have a Facebook, feel free to follow me on there.
Moving on.
Ooh, now see, I have another cow painting that's called, yeah, I have another cow painting that's called Mooing on the Home Front. But yeah, I don't know, I just kind of, I like the whole, this one random brown cow. She's just so cute.
Garden milk?
Yeah, that's a good one too. Got a little lost there for a second. All right. Now down here, this white, it's really not that white. And what some people will say, like, well, it is white, but is it white? It's really not. It's shadowed white. So that means I have to make a color and just tone it down. And just let it bleed a little bit, stuff around it. Pick up some of that. Grab and go. Oh, we only have a half hour left? Oh my gosh. Okay. Wow. I thought I was going to be done with this in like 20 minutes. Okay, so now that we have the important part done, now it's the fun part where we have color. So I'm just gonna actually refill one of my waters. So we have clean water.
You need clean water?
No, I got a whole picture of it. I'm ready to go. So, let's work on Bess here. Use
Or
this.
you just use the two colors?
Yeah, that's it. Just the two colors so far. I mean, it kind of looks like cows, right? Sort of. Let's make it look more like cows. Is this sandstone? Oh, yes, okay. Let's get a little brown. I need to turn my palette, so. Oh, there. Let's get a little yellow ochre raw sienna tones in. I'm going to add the tiniest bit of alizarin crimson to that. I say tiny because alizarin crimson is very strong. That can go a long way. Let's see where this takes us. Bess. Let's get some color on you. Now Bess has a lot of whites on her, so I want to make sure that I maintain those lights. A lot of the times people get caught up with, you know, with the little details. And don't get me wrong, I do too. I love details, love them. But try to be a little bit looser with things. You know, you don't really have to think about every little hair necessarily. You know, with colored pencil and whatnot, I kind of do. But I try to focus it on more of the eye and nose area versus the whole entire thing. Because that's what your eye is going to go to, the more detailed areas. So think about it. You are in charge of whatever you want your viewer to look at. If you want them to look at, you know, the side of the animal, then you can put more contrast and color there, more details there. It's up to you. try to say in my classes, if you're wearing glasses, it's actually kind of helpful because then you could take them off and you could work on your piece with blurry vision. And honestly, you know what? It helps because like I'm constantly always squinting my eyes to see the lights and the darks and just to kind of get out of that like realm where we feel, oh, well, there's this little like turn of the hair there. I'm not anywhere near the point where I should be worrying about that. And if you find that you are one of those people that worries about things too soon, my husband's going to be watching this. He's going to be like, what are you talking about? You worry about everything all the time. But, you know, if I try not to portray that. If you do that, just try that technique. Squint your eyes, take off your glasses, don't look at everything so much. I always try to have the mindset of being calm, stress-free, and then I go home. I'm actually going to take a little bit of that brown and blue mixture and just by wet and wet, just kind of tap that in with my wet color that's already there, my wet yellow ochre type color. Suggest some of these little furrowed brow looks. Let's grab some more of this. That's a nice area. So remember too, if you feel like you're working from a photo that, you know, like, oh, I find a lot of times in my classes people will say, oh, well, that's not in the photo. Like, who cares what's in the photo? I mean, are we Xerox machines? I mean, come on. So try to, you know, change colors, change backgrounds, do something a little different. A little bit more alizarin crimson in that mixture. Kind of grab and go. Let the watercolor do its own thing. Okay, let's go with a little bit more brown now. For all of our other cows, mix up a nice big batch of this. And take a little brown, a little cadmium red. And I see a little bit of that in, say, like here and in here. I mean, obviously in this picture we see a ton of it because it's just, my printer just decided to go red crazy. But this picture has a little bit more truer colors. It's actually just a Xerox. So, let's see. Let's start back here on this guy. We're gonna get a little bit of this color in. Notice I'm kind of putting it a little on top of some areas. A little brown and blue mixing in. Let's go down here to him. Oh, there I go again. They're girls, they're not guys. Can't get over that. This is, I believe, I think this was the terracotta I used. Or was it I think it was just the cadmium red and the brown, that's right. I always have my brown and blue on hand, and that actually goes in all mediums. Always have it on hand because you never know when you need that dark. This one
The brown, yeah.
or that one? This one? That one is the same brown that I used for my black, which is the burnt umber.
Yeah, but what are you putting on now?
That is the black, which is the brown and blue mixture. When I say black, it's really brown and blue. I haven't touched the black yet. Okay, let's move to this guy now. It's like an assembly line. Well, that sounds horrible. All right, a little bit of this nice warm brown. Still grabbing a little bit of my brown and blue, which I still need to grab some more of. I'll restate that back hip area.
Going to do anything with the left ear of that,
This guy?
handicap? No, that's his right ear, the left ear.
This is his left ear. Her left ear, yes. I plan on toning that down a little. Toning it down. Alright, let's move a little bit more over to here now. We still have some of that brown. Now the front part of this cow that's being smushed is kind of in shadow, so we have to be mindful of getting this white part a little bit darker. And I'm gonna mix up kind of like a bluish purpley tone. All right, bluish purpley tone. A little bit of alizarin crimson, a little bit of ultramarine blue. Add a lot of water. Let's just knock that down a little. If you've taken my class before, you know that I always say, oh, just add purple. When in doubt, add purple. That's what I do a lot. Just add purple. I always try to incorporate purples in my shadows. Like on the silo painting over there, there's a lot of purple grass, believe it or not. It just makes sense. It works.
But that's a purple that you mixed, it's not purple like before.
Yeah, this is a purple I mixed. A really nice purple, actually, for those of you that have a pencil already, is Viridian and alizarin crimson. That's a really nice mixture I use for when I'm working with oil. I don't have Viridian on my palette here, so I would just show you, but it's a nice mixture. I like it. Oops, wrong area. Okay, let's work on down here now.
Have you ever tried working with a larger brush?
Yeah, it's what a lot of people actually sometimes say. I have a larger brush here. I might. I have a hard time going into large brushes. I think I'll whip one out.
Do you work with larger brushes with the oils?
Well, this is kind of like the extent of my large brushness. So, I usually work a little bit smaller with watercolor too. But, you know, I mean, I can whip that out. I think I'll do that coming up. A little bit more darks on Bess here. Tone down this ear a little as well. Okay, so let's get some heavy duty stuff going on. All right, let's go in and I'm gonna really kind of deepen my darks a little bit. This guy's huge. I'm gonna add a little bit of red this time to my dark. And my brown that I have too. So let's see. Under here, we have a lot of darks. Map those guys in. A lot of darks in here. I love the granulation that happens when you use a lot of alizarin crimson on the paper. Good stuff. This all has to be a lot darker over here. A lot of the times what people will say in my classes is, are they done yet? And that's great and that's fine, but they'll be lacking a value 10 in their painting. And I always say, value 10s, they make the world go round. You gotta have nice value 10s. And when I say a 10, that means really dark. So I say, grab something that's black. Phone, case, purse, whatever you have laying around. Put it next to your piece. If you don't have something that matches that level of darkness, then you're not done. Best come alive next. I just want to knock this guy back a little. Just trying to get up close. Get back there. Tone you down. All right, Bess. Here we go. So, since she's the focal point, I want to spend more time on her. Oh, I was just going into the black. I guess we could use a little bit of black now. So, I'm going to restate some of the darks in her eyes. Restate the darks in the national. Even though the highlight's not really there on the shadow side of the cat's face, I'm still going to put it in. Still want to have some sort of glimmer. There she is. All right, let's get a little bit more of a warmer area on her coat. This is just a little cat, a little ochre. I'm using this color in just some of the darker areas. careful around this eye because I do know it's still wet. We'll tone down this right side of her lip here. It's still light, but it's still in shadow. A little bit in her nose. Now, the thing I do in all my portraits is I take a little bit of either a cobalt, bless you, or a ultramarine blue, and I add a little, in this case, water, or if you're working another medium white. I take a little bit of that and I put it in areas that I know that I want to kind of give the illusion of wetness. And that kind of helps show that.
That's cobalt blue.
This is cobalt, yes.
Can you say that combination again?
Cobalt or ultramarine with a little bit of white, or in this case, water. The reason I do that is because I always say, okay, well, they're probably outside. There might be a little bit of some of the sky tone reflecting into the highlight. I always find that just makes everything a little bit nicer. This little shoulder blade. Ah, it's stressful.
Did you spend a lot of time teaching anatomy in art school?
Actually, no, I didn't. You mean with human anatomy
Right, so you know the muscular.
or animal anatomy?
Well, either.
Any
Or-
anatomy.
So you know.
we did a lot of figure classes.
People, they say you have to have muscle studies, but you study the structure of animals, figure.
Well, that's a good question. When I was in school, we had a lot of figure classes. We didn't have a straight-on anatomy class, which I do recommend that people take. As for animals, I mean, I've always grown up with animals, and I've always kind of like, grabbed their legs and pulled them this way. We're talking as a kid, not now. And I would kind of figure out, how are they put together? But there is a great book that's called Animal Anatomy. Don't know the name of the author though. And they really break it down muscularly, skeletally, and it's a nice book to kind of see how things are put together. Whenever I start drawing an animal portrait, I always try to think about the basic shapes, and that goes when I draw anything. Basic shapes are what's going to hold everything together. Circles, lines, how close are those circles and lines to each other? I want Bess here to stand out a little bit, so I'm working a little bit more around her, making her shine through.
You said you combine alizarin crimson with viridian. What kind of color do you get with that?
That is actually the Viridian and alizarin crimson mix makes a very gray purple. It's a beautiful color. I used it a lot in my oil painting up here of the cows. So afterwards you can come up and check it out, and I'll point out where I used it. Too much of the green, it will be very gray. If you had just the right amount, it's a really nice purple.
natural for outside.
The Viridian and alizarin. Yeah, it's a great color. This guy's nose kind of got a little lost. Let's put that last in.
Andrea, does knowledge of animal anatomy help in any way?
It does, and I'm no cow expert, but hopefully by the end of the next few weeks I am. But it helps, number one, to go see the animal in person. And whenever I do a commission for someone, I always like to do that. But it helps also to, you can get a few books on them and stuff. But I know the cows are very similar to a lot of our other four-legged friends, like horses and dogs and whatnot, where like the area I'm painting right now, I know that it's gonna round around that way. I know that this is the hip area. I really think it also helps that I used to horseback ride a lot, and that helps when I draw horses and cows a little bit. I used to do that when I was a teenager. So all those things definitely help. For people that haven't drawn an animal before, you can totally do it. You don't have to, go study an animal necessarily to get a great portrait. It does help though, and that really goes with anything. Doing a bunch of studies of something beforehand, smart.
I was thinking that it would be great to go to a zoo, for example, and try to draw and sketch animals, but they're not going to sit still for you. But
No, but actually that's even better. I always love to sketch my dog or my cat where they're just sitting there. They'll be in the most intense poses, like leg up, crazy, however pose that they're sleeping in, and then they'll move. So it's a really good way to just kind of quickly, loosely get that gestural form down, and then, from there, you have your sketch. So at this point, I'm just kind of trying to map around some of my areas so certain other areas stand out. How many times can I say area? We're just gonna knock this whole guy over here down a little. You never want to have too much going on in the corner of your painting, too.
And the picture in the background is green.
The picture in the background is green. It's actually a little pond, but I ran out of room.
I was gonna ask you, are you gonna leave it white?
I think I'm gonna leave it white up there just because I'd rather spend more time on the cows. But in my actual oil painting, I'm gonna do the green. Or I did the green, I should say. Yeah, as I was sketching it out here beforehand, I was like, oh, there won't be background in this one. But that's all right. It's more about the cows. Get that more congested feeling. Who doesn't love to be congested with cows?
So you've always doing it back then last?
What's up?
You've always doing it back then last?
No, actually, well, in this case, since there's really no background, I always say try to do your background along with your subject, no matter what medium you're working in, because that background color is going to affect whatever color values that you have near it. So you kind of want to do it hand in hand. You don't want to do it when it's, too late to, well, you can't change it.
About 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. That's more than I thought. I can't even see a cow anymore. I don't even know what I'm looking
Do
at.
you paint the same picture many times?
I don't actually. This is one of the first times I'm doing that. I'm just so cow obsessed right now. I was like, oh, they're probably gonna expect me to do like a dog or a cat, and I know you guys probably all were, but I was like, I think I just want to do a cow though. I just think they're fun. Let's get a little bit. I want to get a little bit of this kind of purpley tone. Let's mix some of that up again. And around the eye. Once again with the purple. Purple's not really there. I just want it there. So for those of you interested, I do have a couple of workshops coming up. They are located at the Visual Arts Center of New Jersey and the Center for Contemporary Art. That's in Summit and in Bedminster. All those classes and workshops, they're always on my website. So if you want to take one of my cards I have up here, check those out. Those are available for registration. I know I have an animal portraiture one coming up in June, which I don't think is online yet, but I'm not sure. I have a colored pencil one coming up. It's on a Friday over in Bedminster.
It's a one-day thing?
It's a one-day thing. I also have a lot of classes that are starting for enrollment as well. In any of my classes, you can use watercolor, any other mediums. In my classes over at the Visual Arts Center, I try to do a demo in different subjects every week, so that way anyone that's working in any medium can get a little bit of a demo. And it's also fun to kind of see other things that if you haven't started working in it. So those are options. So hard to talk and paint at the same time. I also have up here in my portfolio rack a bunch of original paintings and whatnot for sale. Cash or check is totally good. So if you're interested, feel free to come on up, check them out. I just added a little bit of sap green to the nose, just because. I love adding sap green a little everywhere. Green and purple, they work really well together. So, I know we're really short on time, so, but basically. How much time do we have left? Does anyone have time?
It's time.
Oh, it is time. It is time.
Well, until the food comes, until the food comes.
Oh, there's food coming?
Oh, the food's out already.
Oh, the food's out. Okay, well, on that note, then I guess I'll wrap things up. I'm going to sign it down here. And it will bleed, but that's okay. So, I mean, I didn't get as far as I wanted to, but it's, it's cowish, so that works. Okay. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you. Very well done. Thank you. Now you get to eat.
Yay. I don't want to keep working on it.
Could you hold it up?
Oh, yeah, I have to hold it. Thank you. I wish I got further. I didn't expect it would go so fast. Oh, yeah.
It's okay, we don't really need people to finish, it's not that.